Hamas chief Khalil al-Hayya said in a speech televised Saturday that the militant group has agreed to a Gaza ceasefire proposal it received this week from mediators in Egypt and Qatar. He added that he hopes the Israeli occupation will not undermine the plan aimed at securing a pause in the Hamas-Israel war in Gaza that erupted in October 2023. Security sources told Reuters on Thursday that Egypt had received positive indications from Israel over a new ceasefire proposal that would include a transitional phase. The proposal suggests Hamas release 5 of the Israeli hostages it is holding each week, the sources said. It comes as Hamas released video Saturday of Israeli hostage Elkanah Bobot asking for help to be freed so he can see his wife and son. And as protesters against the Israeli government like Amun Shan Gillan took to the streets of Tel Aviv to push for their return.
We're here today because we want all the hostages to come home and all the people of Gaza to come home also. All the people need to have life. We all like to live. This is what we want.
While Palestinians in Gaza's Han Yunis like Hadaya al-Najjar prepared for Eid on Saturday, amidst Israel's resumption of an aerial and ground operation.
We want a solution. We don't want the situation to stay like this. We are people like everyone else. Aren't we human beings? Don't the children have the right to be joyful, like all the other children of the world? Why should we be different?
The Israeli Prime Minister's office said it had discussed the proposal and has sent a counter-proposal to the mediators. Reuters asked the Prime Minister's office if it had also agreed to the ceasefire proposal, but it did not immediately respond.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday demanded Hamas disarm and its leaders depart Gaza as he promised to step up military operations against the group. His comments come after the Hamas leader in Gaza said it had agreed to a ceasefire proposed by mediators, Egypt and Qatar, that included the release of 5 Israeli hostages each week. Those efforts are aimed at renewing a 2-month truce that saw the exchange of Israelis kidnapped by Palestinian militants for Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli detention. Israel resumed strikes and ground incursions into Gaza on March 18th. The Hamas leader said Israel's demands it lay down its arms was a red line the group would not cross. Netanyahu said he was conducting negotiations and military operations simultaneously, a strategy he said, quote, creates the conditions for the release of our hostages. On Sunday, the first day of the Muslim Eid al-Fitr holiday, health authorities in Gaza said at least 24 people, including several children, had been killed in Israeli strikes. They said 9 were killed in a single tent in the southern city of Khan Yunis. Israel launched its campaign in Gaza after a devastating Hamas attack on Israeli communities around the Gaza Strip on October 7, 2023, that killed some 1,200 people, according to an Israeli tally, and saw 250 abducted as hostages. The Israeli campaign has killed more than 50,000 Palestinians, according to Palestinian health authorities, and devastated much of the coastal enclave, leaving hundreds of thousands of people in tents or makeshift shelters. Since Israel resumed its attacks in Gaza on March 18th, hundreds of Palestinians have been killed and tens of thousands have been forced to evacuate areas in northern Gaza where they had returned following the ceasefire agreement in January. Netanyahu also said his government would allow what he called the voluntary immigration of Palestinians who wished to leave Gaza, an idea proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump originally called for relocating the entire population of Gaza, 2.3 million people, to other countries, including Egypt and Jordan, and developing Gaza as a U.S.-owned resort. However, no country has agreed to take in the population, and Israel has since said that any departures by Palestinians would be voluntary.
Syria's interim president Ahmed al-Shara announced a transitional government on Saturday, with a woman and religious minorities among those named as ministers. The broadened cabinet is seen as a key milestone in the transition from decades of Assad family rule and to improving Syria's ties with the West. In a speech, Shara listed out his goals for the country. They included rebuilding Syria on a foundation of accountability, fixing economic and social issues, as well as strengthening human rights.
I want to stress that this government is the government of change and development, a government that bears the responsibility of the people's aspirations and hopes of a bright and sustainable future. We believe that hard and loyal work, along with cooperation between the people, will be the key to achieving these goals.
The new Sunni Islamist-led authorities have been under pressure from the West and Arab countries to form a government that is more inclusive of Syria's diverse ethnic and religious communities. That pressure grew after hundreds of Alawites were killed in violence along Syria's western coast this month. The Assad family were members of the Alawite sect. On Saturday, an Alawite, Yarub Bada, was appointed transportation minister, while Hind Kabawat, a Christian woman, took her oath to become social affairs and labour minister. Shara also named a Druze agriculture chief and a Kurdish education minister. After his group led rebels to topple the Assad regime, Shara became interim president in January. He pledged to form an inclusive transitional government that would build up Syria's gutted public institutions and run the country until it could hold elections, which he said could take up to 5 years. Earlier this month, the leadership issued a constitutional declaration to serve as the foundation for the interim period. It kept a central role for Islamic law while guaranteeing women's rights and freedom of expression.
French far-right leader Marine Le Pen left a Paris courthouse with her political career in turmoil on Monday. She was found guilty of embezzlement and left the building before being handed an immediate 5-year ban from public office. The sentence stops her from running in the 2027 presidential race unless she successfully appeals beforehand. It marks a catastrophic setback for Le Pen, the National Rally Party chief and a frontrunner in opinion polls for the 2027 contest. Le Pen, the RN and 24 party figures were accused of diverting more than $4 million of European Parliament funds to pay France-based staff. They had argued the money was used legitimately. Issuing the guilty verdict, the judge said Le Pen had been at the heart of the scheme. The defendants were not accused of pocketing the money, but rather using the funds to benefit their party. The judge said investigations in the case showed not administrative errors, but embezzlement within a system framework put in place to reduce the party's costs. The judge also gave Le Pen a 4-year prison sentence, of which 2 years are a suspended sentence and 2 which will be served under home detention, and a $100,000 fine. She is almost certain to appeal, and neither of those penalties would be applied until her appeals are exhausted. Her removal from the race is likely to intensify a debate in France over how judges police politics.
U.S. President Donald Trump threatened Iran on Sunday with bombing and also with what he called secondary tariffs if Tehran did not come to a new agreement with Washington over its nuclear program. In a telephone interview with NBC News, Trump said, quote, "If they don't make a deal, there will be bombing. It will be bombing, the likes of which they have never seen before." But he also suggested another outcome could be tariffs on countries that imported Iranian oil in an effort to further pressure Iran for concessions. In 2015, Iran signed a deal with the U.S. and other Western powers, accepting curbs and inspections on its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief.
I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
In his first term in office, Trump pulled out of that deal and ratcheted up trade barriers. In response, Tehran ramped up its uranium enrichment beyond the limits of the 2015 accord. Since returning to office, the Trump administration reached out to Tehran in a letter about coming to a new agreement. Iran sent a response through Oman saying it would not engage in direct talks while under U.S. tariff pressure and military threats. On Sunday, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said the U.S. government had breached the earlier agreement and needed to, quote, create trust. Tehran says its nuclear program is wholly for civilian energy purposes.
A Congolese general expressed indignation on Friday at social media posts by the president of Uganda's son that threatened to seize a city in northern Congo.
UPDF continues to be.
Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who is head of the Uganda People's Defense Forces, or UPDF, made the threats last weekend as he commented on an offensive by Rwanda-backed M23 rebels in eastern Congo. He wrote that UPDF will not oppose M23's seizure of Kisangani, but they better move quickly, otherwise we will do it ourselves. Kainerugaba, who regularly makes inflammatory social media posts, also threatened to arrest the governor of Ituri province, who he said was resisting UPDF's operations. General Jacques Chaligonza, who is in charge of operations and intelligence for Congo's military, was asked about the comments on Friday. He said Kainerugaba had no right to threaten the governor, and they had told him if he continues with this, we will also have a fierce response. Uganda has had thousands of troops in eastern Congo, north of the fighting with M23, since 2021, to help fight another militia, the Allied Democratic Forces. UPDF's Ground Forces Commander, Lieutenant General Kayanja Muhanga, said on Friday that after defeating the ADF, Uganda's military will have nothing left to do in Congo.
After achieving peace in Ituri, then the Uganda People's Defense Forces will have to go back to Uganda.
The incident reflects heightened diplomatic tensions amid the biggest conflict in decades in Congo's east. M23 rebels have captured the region's two largest cities, Goma and Bukavu, since January. The violence has prompted fears of a wider regional war, with the armies of Congo, Rwanda and Burundi having all participated in the fighting.
U.S. President Donald Trump says a TikTok deal will happen before a deadline this Saturday. The app is owned by Chinese company ByteDance, and Trump set the deadline back in January for it to find a non-Chinese buyer or face a U.S. ban on national security grounds. Trump told reporters on Air Force One on Sunday that interest in TikTok was high.
We have a lot of potential buyers. There's tremendous interest in TikTok. The decision is going to be my decision, as you know, through Congress. They've given me the power to make the decision. I'd like to see TikTok remain alive.
TikTok did not immediately comment. Washington says TikTok's ownership by ByteDance makes it beholden to the Chinese government, and that Beijing could use the app to conduct influence operations against the United States and collect data on Americans. Reuters reported on Friday that private equity firm Blackstone is evaluating making a small minority investment in TikTok's U.S. operations, according to sources. Trump previously said he was willing to extend the April 5th deadline if an agreement over the social media app was not reached. TikTok's future has been up in the air since a 2024 law required ByteDance to divest TikTok by January 19th. The White House has been involved to an unprecedented level in the closely watched deal talks, effectively playing the role of an investment bank.
China, Japan, and South Korea held the first trade talks in 5 years on Sunday, amid concerns over U.S. President Donald Trump's import tariffs. The three Asian manufacturing giants agreed to, quote, closely cooperate for a comprehensive and high-level talks to improve free trade in the region. That's according to a statement released after the meeting. Trade ministers from the three nations met ahead of Trump's planned announcement on Wednesday of more tariffs in what he calls, quote, Liberation Day. Last week, Trump announced 25% import tariffs on cars and auto parts, a move that may hurt companies, especially Asian automakers, which are among the largest vehicle exporters to the U.S. Seoul, Beijing, and Tokyo are major U.S. trading partners, although they have been at loggerheads among themselves. Disagreements over issues, including territorial disputes, have prevented them from making any substantial progress on a trilateral free trade deal since starting talks in 2012. The ministers agreed to hold their next ministerial meeting in Japan.